When a robot's environment is unknown, navigating in that environment becomes risky, and so tools for dealing with the uncertainty are needed. In this work, we proposed a framework for risk-aware path planning and assignment for a ground robot that uses uncertain perception from an aerial robot above. This work is presented by myself, Maimuna Toba, along with Vishnu Sharma, Lifeng Zhu, and Pratap Tokekar. Our work is inspired by previous work in UAV-UGV coordination, where GPS information might not be available or it's become obsolete due to environment changes. Disaster response and space exploration are some examples of that. In this setup, the aerial robot acts as a scout for the ground robot, taking a less obstructed view from above to help the ground robot navigate. In our setup, the UAV takes an aerial georeferenced image to gather the terrain information. This image is semantically segmented, and the navigation path is planned from point A to point B based on this semantic segmentation. However, direct use of the semantic segmentation can cause us to choose a risky or uncertain path. For example, if the image contains occlusions or if there are objects that were not seen during training. So instead, we propose a risk-aware planner that uses the semantic segmentation along with the uncertainty to predict the map of the environment. Using uncertainty, we can find a safer path for the ground robot. This is a high-level overview of our approach. In the previous risk-neutral case, the overhead image is segmented, then used directly by the planner. But in our risk-aware approach, we also extract the uncertainty from the segmentation and use that uncertainty information to provide a more risk-aware path and assignment for the ground robot. There are 3 parts to our framework. The first is the uncertainty-aware perception that takes an aerial georeferenced image and provides both a semantic segmentation and an uncertainty map that corresponds to that image. Since we use a deep learning perception model for semantic segmentation to estimate the uncertainty in the aerial image, we use dropout during inference time to extract the distribution of the model predictions. This is done by generating multiple stochastic samples of the segmentation and computing the variance over those samples. In the image on the top right, we use the stochastic mode as the segmentation map. On the bottom right, we use the variance over all stochastic samples as the uncertainty map. Darker areas in the uncertainty map correspond to higher values of variance and higher uncertainty. The lighter areas show lower variance and lower uncertainty. The second part of our framework is the risk-aware path planning. Here we use the semantic segmentation along with the uncertainty map to generate candidate paths for different start and goal positions. The input to our path planner is the semantic segmentation combined with the uncertainty map. This produces a single cost map that accounts for different levels of uncertainty based on a weighting parameter that we call lambda. Different candidate paths are produced using the risk-aware cost function, and this tunes the tolerance of the uncertainty that we're willing to have. So in the image on the far right, the blue path on the top corresponds to a higher value of lambda, and this assigns a higher cost to the parts of the image that have higher uncertainty. So this makes the path planner much less tolerant of uncertain areas, and it chooses a more conservative path, and it sticks to areas where there's clear road. Whereas the red path on the bottom is more risk adventurous, and it assigns less cost to the uncertain areas, and it allows the ground robot to navigate in areas where there might be vegetation or trees. The third and final part of our proposed framework is the path assignment. This chooses a single path for each start and each goal position from the pool of candidate paths that we generated from the path planner. To ensure that the path assignment is risk aware, we use the CVaR risk measure. This refers to the conditional value at risk, and it's been adopted from stock portfolio optimization. CVaR calculates the expectation on risk aversion defined by the parameter alpha. Maximizing CVaR provides the path assignment. Instead of taking the expected or average stochastic utility resulting from choosing a given path, we consider the worst alpha percent cases of using that path. Alpha is the user-defined risk level. When alpha is small, we consider only the farthest left worst alpha percent cases. This will likely result in a more conservative decision to avoid risk. The advantage of using CVaR is that it gives more flexibility for the robot to choose the risk that it's willing to take by tuning the parameter alpha. We optimize the CVaR of the stochastic utility to generate the risk-aware path assignment. The utility function here measures the sum of the reciprocal costs at all demand locations. We assume that at each demand location, only the vehicle with the maximum reciprocal cost is going to be selected. In other words, the vehicle that arrives first. This is based on a first-to-come, first-to-serve principle. The maximum selection here makes the utility function submodular, which means that it has diminishing returns over incremental additions of assigning vehicle path pairs to the demand location. To optimize the stochastic submodular function, we present a sequential greedy assignment algorithm, which builds on the standard greedy algorithm. We showed that our assignment algorithm gives a bounded approximation of the optimal assignment, and it runs in polynomial time. The general version of this algorithm was proposed in our previous work, but here we specifically focus on the assignment problem.
For the experiment, we created our own data from AirSim simulator, which gives us photorealistic images, ground truth, and multiple views. We captured 480 images and split them into training, validation, and test datasets. We also reduced the number of target classes to 12 categories, like road, pedestrian, trees, etc. Over this dataset, we train a Bayesian segment model. In order to introduce uncertainty, we simulate an uncertain environment by building our training and test datasets over different parts of the city environment as shown in the image. In a normal dataset split, which we call unshuffled data, training data mainly consists of high-rise buildings and roads, whereas the test dataset would contain grass patches and roads. We also create another dataset called shuffled dataset, which has similar distribution across training and test data, to further prove that unshuffled test data would generate uncertain predictions. We train our model on an NVIDIA Tesla P100 GPU with batch size 5 and generate 20 samples. For the purpose of defining cost, we can further categorize the 12 classes into navigable, partially navigable, and non-navigable obstacle entities shown in green, yellow, and blue color here. One key thing to note here is that our ground truth did not have any distinction between the pixels for road and the pixels for grass patches. Our expectation in this case is that the model would be confident in predicting roads, as it has seen examples of road in training data. For the grass patches, we expect model to provide uncertain predictions. As expected, in the predictions, we see that the mode of the predicted label is able to identify the roads well. Also, the prediction for roads has a low variance indicated by the bright regions in the variance image. We want to verify whether the test split of our unshuffled data indeed has uncertain regions. For this, we trained models on shuffled and unshuffled data, and we find that for shuffled data, mode is closer to the ground truth, and there are more certain predictions as compared to the unshuffled data. To show that the unseen regions are the source of uncertainty, we compare the cross entropy in prediction over test data against the number of pixels in training data for each class. The general trend observed here shows that the low occurrence of a class in the training data indeed results in bad prediction at the test time. In the path planning phase, the lambda parameter was used as a measure of risk aversion. The cost of navigable, obstacle classes, and the trees was set to 1, 3, and 2.5 respectively. As shown here, for higher values of lambda, which implies higher aversion to risk, path tends to pass through regions with high certainty, which is roads in this case. On the other hand, lower lambda results in a risk-adventurous planning, and the path may go through regions of low certainty. In order to quantify the effect of risk-aware prediction on path planning, we define a metric called surprise. For finding surprise over a predicted path, we accumulate the cost over all the pixels lying on the path for both predicted and ground truth semantic segmentation. The difference between these accumulated costs is defined as the surprise. For analysis, we take a combination of 3 starting points and 2 destination points on the test data and predict paths with different risk aversion levels. While we expected surprise to move closer to 0 with increase in lambda, as it would push the path to pass through certain areas with low cost, like roads, we observed that for higher lambda, the surprise and the fluctuation is higher. We found that this is due to the path passing through areas with wrong prediction and high confidence. What we understand from these observations is that a sound path planning requires both good semantic segmentation to give us the correct predictions and an uncertainty map to avoid the unseen areas. To verify the performance of our risk-aware assignment algorithm, we plot the distributions of the assignment utility with respect to different risk levels. As shown in the figure, if the risk level is low, the selected assignment utilities generally have a lower mean value with lower variance, which means the selection is conservative. While if the risk level is large, the selection is riskier. As you can see, the assignment utilities generally have a larger mean but with larger variance. We also use the qualitative results to show this trade-off between risk and reward. If the risk is low, shown by alpha, the path with lower mean and lower variance are selected. If the risk level is high, indicated by the higher value of alpha, the paths with higher mean and higher variance are selected. Our future work will focus on the online coordination of aerial robots and the ground vehicle. We will deploy multiple aerial robots to assist the ground vehicles. The ground vehicles can choose when and which aerial robot to communicate with to obtain the desired overhead image. Using the updated overhead image, the ground vehicle can make real-time risk-aware planning and assignment to better serve the demand locations. Thank you all for listening to our presentation. We would be happy to take any questions.